Welcome to Desperately Seeking the 80s. I am Meg.
And I am Jessica. And Meg and I have been friends since 1982. We got through middle school and high school together here in New York City, where we still live.
And where we podcast about New York City in the 80s. I do Rip from the Headlines.
And I do pop culture.
So it's my birthday tomorrow, Jessica.
I know it's your birthday.
And I wanted to give you a heads up about something.
I'm frightened now. But I'm excited. But I'm frightened. But I'm excited.
Don't get me that pink sweater from Blue Tree.
Is this reverse psychology?
No, really don't.
Okay.
Not that you were going to. I mean, maybe
I actually was going to Blue Tree.
Of course you are.
I mean, duh. So what is it about?
Store.
I know. Your other item is not from Blue Tree, and you will laugh. But why are you telling me not to get the pink sweater other than the fact that it's $1 million? Did you buy it?
Mother got me the pink sweater.
Are you serious right now?
I'm telling you the God's honest truth.
I have to tell you, I feel shocked.
I feel so blessed.
Oh, hashtag blessed. Hashtag pink sweater Blue Tree.
Like when she gave me the box, I didn't open it for like a day or so, and then I was like, okay, I'll open it.
How could you possibly not open something from Blue Tree for a day or two?
Oh, I like saving things. I like hoarding, and then like I need it now. You know what I mean? Like
that's called I need it then. Like that's not I need it now. That's I need it later. I would have eaten the box open.
Anyway,
but I
was like, oh, it's been a day or so. I think I will open it early. I won't wait for my actual birthday. I'll open it early. And as I started to open it, I was like, there's no way, right? Because that would be crazy. She did it. Well, isn't that so thoughtful? And look, hold on a second. The only way she knew about that pink sweater was because of this podcast. So it's got a lot of layers of thoughtfulness. And
are you choking up right now?
A little bit.
I love this. This is beautiful.
And now I'm so scared to put it on because I'm like,
what if you don't love it?
No, I know.
Oh, did you try? Okay.
But I'm like, what if I spill something on it?
Well, you're gonna have to wear a lobster bib everywhere you go.
Seriously,
or you could wear it under a jumpsuit.
I was thinking about like maybe just framing it.
Yes, that's. You know what? Like a basketball jersey, like LeBron James, like basketball jersey.
Pink sweater.
The pink sweater. Well, I am extremely happy for you. I'm extremely impressed with your mom's gift giving prowess. That's really impressive. A++. I'm relieved that it's not on me. But you deserve that sweater. You deserve the sweater.
I don't know. There is a moment when you get something that's that special that you're like, am I worthy?
I think you are.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it is a moment of like.
Well, your mother, even better, your mother thinks you are. That's what's even more important. Your mom is giving you a big high sign.
I just feel like I need to be a better person in order
to wear the sweater.
Like, justify the sweater.
Don't aim too high. Don't get excited.
Your engagement question. Do you remember?
This is like
the Diane Sawyer.
Yeah, I like that I went low and you went high.
Do you remember the first hip hop song you heard?
This is an interesting question because now we're doing our favorite category, which is sliding musical genres. So like hip hop, are we talking 90s?
No, we're talking 80s.
Okay, hip hop. I see. I hip hop. I can only summon up rap.
Then. Yeah, do rap. Give me a rap.
Run DMC.
Okay,
110%. Yes.
Before Beastie Boys.
Yes.
Do you remember, Jessica?
That I rapped it with you at school?
In Glee Club?
Yes. You be illin'.
Yes.
One day you won a ticket to see Dr. J. Front row seats. It's free. No pay.
We did that.
We are of our time.
That was awkward.
Yeah. I hope the tape doesn't resurface.
Seriously, everybody needs to picture us. We had a Glee Club. We wore.
No, we didn't do it for Glee Club. We did it for our senior
We did
talent.
it for. No. We also did it for Glee Club.
I don't believe you.
I am going to tell you exactly where and when.
Oh my shit.
We went to Lawrenceville.
I did not do that at Lawrenceville.
Yes, we did.
No.
We sure did.
In front of boys? We did that.
Wearing full. I have to explain the uniform. Or sorry, the costume that we wore. We had white frilly shirts and we had black skirts that went down to the floor and red cummerbunds. That is what we all wore. And
I don't believe that we did. We
did. Ask anyone. Ask Sasha, ask Regina, ask Katie. That is what we did. We did it at Lawrenceville.
I know why I want to die.
Okay, so and that predates Run DMC, I think.
No, that is Run DMC.
No, You Be Illin.
You Be Illin is Run DMC.
No, isn't that Beastie Boys?
No, darling.
Oh.
You Be Illin is Run DMC. Look, I mean, seriously, this is like you've got to, like, please do not look it up. Look it up.
That's a good segue to me writing a story about something I know nothing about.
Okay.
Which I have done on occasion. There was the baseball story, which actually I think went off rather well. I mean, sometimes it's interesting to do these deep dives.
It's interesting. It's great because that's how we learn.
That's how we learn. And this story, I will say, I could have had it ready like weeks ago, but I just really realized that I had to do so much more research. I couldn't just do this on the fly because I knew nothing, which is so interesting because it was in my
you know
backyard.
everything.
No, because it was happening a few blocks away.
Oh, when you say
like,
in your backyard, you mean literally in your backyard.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. So, sources are Hip Hop Evolution from Netflix, a PBS documentary about the Blackout, and Rolling Stone. Those are the main sources. On July 1st, 1982, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five released their hip-hop song, The Message.
I'm so excited about this one.
Unlike most of the house party raps that preceded it, The Message had social commentary that illustrated how hard it was to live in the Bronx. Some of the lyrics. A child is born with no state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind. God is smiling on you, but he's frowning too, because only God knows what you'll go through. You'll grow in the ghetto, live in second rate, and your eyes will sing a song called Deep Hate. As we have discussed in earlier podcasts, the Bronx was in a bleak situation in the 70s. I'm going to do a callback to episode 101, A Bronx Tale and Aliens in the Burbs. In my segment, we talked a lot about the Bronx is burning, basically, in the 70s. Robert Moses's Cross Bronx Expressway, completed in 1963, ran straight through the Bronx, displacing mostly Black and Puerto Rican communities, sending them into public housing projects. By the 70s, the economy had collapsed, real estate values crashed, fires raged, and drugs became very attractive, both as a pastime and a source of income. Public programs were gutted. There were no longer any funded after-school activities, so some kids, in search of community and protection, started forming gangs. The Black Spades, Ghetto Brothers, Savage Skulls, Seven Immortals, to name a few. It was expensive to travel downtown to the clubs, so some innovative DJs started throwing parties in the park and in basements and apartments in the neighborhood. DJ Kool Herc had 2 turntables, a microphone, a sound system, and a bunch of R&B, soul, funk, and salsa records. Lots of music that was hard to find on the radio, but his parents had the records. So he's a DJ, right? So he's just he's moving from one song to the next song, right? And his parties were about keeping the dancing going. And also he just had such great taste. And he was so good at like switching from one genre to the other, but kind of seamlessly. So people were also like, oh, I appreciate all of this. It's not like there's just one kind of genre of music, like disco, you know? It's like, no, we're going all over the place here. But it definitely like a rhythm, a beat, that was the thing that was most attractive that all these genres had in common. Both DJ Kool Herc and Grandmaster Flash, who's another OG DJ.
I love you so much.
Thank you.
OG DJ was great. And it tripped off the tongue.
Yes.
Well done.
Yes. It's like I took a beginner class in hip hop. And so now I am sharing what I have learned. Okay. So so we've added Grandmaster Flash into the story. DJ Kool Herc and Grandmaster Flash were expert at finding the breakdowns in the songs. And that's the part with the bass and the drum. And those parts are especially danceable. And they were able to isolate them and repeat them, like by moving the, what do you call that on a
fader?
Is that what the
I don't know.
Arm of a record player?
Yes.
Yeah. Break boys or b-boys, named after those breaks in the songs, developed their dance moves in concert with these innovative DJs' sound. The music influenced the dance influenced the music. Grandmaster Flash.
I'm officially blown away that now I know what breakdancing is. Right. Not what it is, but like where that comes from.
Break. I wasn't sure if that was a revelation for me or maybe somebody else.
Well, for the two of us.
For the two of us, yes.
We don't know. Yay.
B-boys. Mm-hmm. Right. Grandmaster Flash had grown up fascinated by technology. You know those kids who are like, I want to take it apart and put it back together. And then they're surrounded by like all these wires and they're like, now I get it. He was one of those kids. He wanted to take apart a radio, a hairdryer, a vacuum cleaner. He just wanted to know how it all worked. He started tinkering with amps and receivers and turntables and created a few spinning techniques, included quick mix theory, which elongated the drum breaks using duplicate copies of the record. So now we can have those wonderful breakouts can last even longer.
Because he had multiple decks.
Uh-huh. And this led to cutting and scratching. So he's a true innovator. Also, Africa Bambaataa.
Okay, time out.
What?
You leaned into your whiteness in a really beautiful way. That's all. Africa Bambaataa. Welcome to the program. You're like William Buckley. Like, hello. Yes.
Would you like to hear about him?
I would like to know about Africa Bambaataa. Yes,
great.
Please.
Okay. He was a DJ who was also a member of the Black Spades, one of those gangs. And he formed the Universal Zulu Nation, which actually valued African heritage and culture. And it was really interesting listening to some of these guys talk about it because they were like, we sort of grew up in like not really valuing our heritage in that way at all. And when he came along, it was like, no, you should. And it's really cool. And there's like, oh my God, it really is cool. So that was exciting, right? Mm-hmm. And he encouraged gang members who had been battling it out like because of turf, like there were turf wars and stuff. But he was like, hey, why don't we battle it out on the dance floor or in DJ contests? So that's why you got like breakdancing battles and DJ battles, because it was still a contest. They had all this energy pent up that needed to be expressed. But how about we express it in this artistic way rather than through violence? So these three DJs, DJ Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, and Africa Bambaataa, are considered the holy trinity of hip-hop. And they ruled the roost in the Bronx in the 70s. What they were creating was very popular in their community, but it wasn't really traveling beyond it, partly because of resources. only a handful of DJs had access to the electronic equipment required to make the sound. And, in the case of Grandmaster Flash, he knew how to build it, and he had the musical taste and everything. So, but without that, where are you going to get it? It's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of competition from other DJs.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody had the stuff.
Callbacks to the Crazy Eddie episode.
Oh.
It's amazing to think about it because now little kids' toys do what those make those beats. It's so ubiquitous and it's so cheap now. It's amazing to think about. Too expensive, too difficult, and you had to be basically an electrical engineer to do it.
Right. But then lightning struck. Literally. On Wednesday, July 13th, 1977, New York City was suffering through a heat wave. A severe thunderstorm moved in, and 3 separate lightning bolts struck substations on the Hudson River and Yonkers, and by 9:37 p.m., the entire Con Ed power system serving New York City had shut down. There had been a blackout in 1965, when the city was still a thriving manufacturing town, and that was described as good-natured, with people frolicking in the dark. There was a baby boom,
Yeah, got it.
Not so much in 1977. The recession was in full force, and the Bronx was already the neglected stepchild, and it was so damn hot. All it took was a blackout for the lid to fly off the pressure cooker. By 10 p.m., the looting was in full force. Now, all the Upper East Siders and West Siders were nervous that the needy would swarm downtown to their neighborhoods to steal their stuff. But that's not what happened. The looters stayed in the Bronx and Bed-Stuy and Bushwick and raided the mom-and-pop stores in their own neighborhoods. There were different kinds of looters, right? There were the criminals who wanted stuff to resell. There were the people who just needed groceries and Pampers. That was a really big deal, actually, was stealing Pampers because they needed Pampers. There were people who got swept up in the chaos and the energy of the night. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of peer pressure. And then there were the budding DJs who finally had access to the electronic equipment they needed to create their music. When the blackout hit, DJ Disco Wiz and Grandmaster Kaz were spinning for a crowd and running their equipment from an outlet in a park. This is a quote. "The blackout was scary as hell. We were DJing with another crew at the park, and all of a sudden the lights started going out, and we thought we had blew out the power because we were attached to the light pole." But not only did the set go out, the entire block went out, and the whole Bronx went out. It was pandemonium after that. It was like everybody realized at the same time, oh shit, blackout, run for the stores. And everybody just fanned out all different directions towards stores. I ran around the corner to the place I got my first DJ set from. I ran right around the corner to that place, helped pull the gate down, kicked the glass down and everything, and pulled me a mixer out of there. Close quote. And DJ Clark Kent, quote, "That's when I got my first set of turntables. I was this young boy who was deep with learning how to DJ, and I never had my own set. I just wanted to be equipped. I just wanted my own turntables. If I was smart enough back then, I would have thought, yeah, you're going to need an amplifier and some speakers too." But it was just me and my cousin. We couldn't take all that. And MC Shy D, quote, "They was tearing them stores up. Bambaataa had the main equipment in Bronx River, the big stuff. But you had guys 15, 16. They started coming out with their little mini sets. Bambaataa influenced everybody, but that blackout, everybody went crazy, man. People got equipment and everything." Close quote. Now, so much of the history of hip-hop is oral and relies on people's memories. I mean, these sets that they talk about, they're legendary. No one was recording them, which is really interesting. So it's like, it's people's memories of what happened, and people disagree with each other. There's a lot, trust me, a lot of disagreement, which is also kind of hard to like follow the whole thread because everyone has their own kind of hero story.
Mm-hmm. It's the Rashomon of the Bronx.
Some claim the Blackout of 77 was integral to hip-hop's growth because now a whole bunch of new innovators had cool equipment to experiment on. But Africa Bambaataa, one of the Holy Trinity, disputes that. Quote, Blackout 77 got nothing to do with hip-hop. Whoever came up with that is talking a lot of bullshit. But according to Raheem, he was one of the Furious Five.
Mm-hmm.
The Blackout of 1977 is what helped spawn a multitude of aspiring hip-hop practitioners because prior to that, the majority of aspiring DJs didn't have two turntables and a mixer or the speakers. So when the Blackout happened, it just seems that everybody got the same idea at the same time. And when the lights came back on in New York City, everybody had DJ equipment. The next evolution after DJing and b-boying was MCing, and that's when you get into rap. And that was putting poetry to this music. And the hip-hop culture, which also includes graffiti, was minutes away from being discovered by mainstream culture. But that's a story for another day, because I just might do
a part two.
I mean, not immediately, but I know what my part two is going to be.
So I have show and tell for you.
Okay.
Based on this. So as you know, I collect vintage clothing, and I was at the Manhattan Vintage Clothing Fair maybe a year and a half ago. And I walked past a booth, and there were two very young people in their 20s who had this booth. And I saw up on the wall, they had a couple of T-shirts that were like their Holy Grail T-shirts. And one of them, I was like, I have to buy that. How much is it? And they were like, no, it's not for sale. And I said, excuse me, I was in the Blackout of 77 and I want that shirt. And they're like, no, tell us about it. So what I have, and what I'm going to show you, we'll put it on the Instagram, is obviously a couple of friends made T-shirts that were I survived the New York City 1977 blackout. And they look awful because they chose a weird like flesh tone for the T-shirt, but it looks amazing. But what I love about your story and why I bring up the T-shirt is that, and why I said, it's the Rashomon of the Bronx, is that everybody, as you said, they had a hero story, but everyone in the dark had a totally different perspective, totally different motivations. Everyone was running amok. And I think that the idea that Africa Bambaataa is like, that didn't happen.
Right.
At all. While everyone else is like,
yeah,
two turntables and a microphone. Yes, that it's more than a blackout. And to your point, I'm just supporting what you're saying with great enthusiasm, that it was a turning point for New York, because I think it was also a really good illustration of how out of control things really were. That it's like, it's so bad, it's hanging on by a thread. Great. Now turn off the lights.
And I also thought it was, I mean, I could have gone on and on and on about the blackout. There are lots of crazy, interesting stories, but I wanted to keep it on track, specifically about hip hop. But everyone was siloed. Like, it wasn't about like, oh, well, let's go to the, whatever, the Crazy Eddie on 86th Street, which frankly would not have been hard to get to. Instead, it was like, no, we're just going to go around the corner. And I think it speaks to how siloed the neighborhoods were, that people weren't really going, there wasn't as much interborough.
Well, to your own point of several episodes ago, there is no subway.
Right. Where was that, though?
Wasn't it into
was that in Bronx? No, that was Brooklyn. No, that was Brooklyn.
Well, nonetheless, the idea
there was no subway that connected those two areas in Brooklyn. I mean, you could totally come downtown. You could go to work, but people from the Bronx, because that's just, I mean, the subways were there. It's just what they didn't do it. They didn't do it. But also, you're
running?
right. You're right. Of course, the subways weren't running. Of course,
there's no one can go any unless you're ready.
You
to
could
hike.
get in a car.
Well,
the point is, you could have if you were motivated, and they didn't. And also that this music was so much a part of that area, and that just a mile away, nobody has any idea yet. Nobody has any clue what's happening up there. I guess that was also sort of the idea of like the silos.
Mm-hmm.
Because eventually they do come downtown. They go all the way downtown. But it hasn't happened at this point in the story, which is just, I don't know, I just think it's really, really interesting.
Well, we've talked about this on this podcast a few times when we think about like what would it be today? Like what would it be like today? And that there is a seamless and constant flow of information and sharing. And it's like someone has an idea, someone farts and everybody knows about it, right? I think it must be, I wonder if it's hard for some of our younger listeners to imagine like what it is to be in silence. Like you have the space to experiment. Someone isn't going to be filming you. Someone isn't going to be up your ass with a camera or whatever. Like, I think that's also what really is intriguing to me and exciting about this is that this was a community where it was safe to experiment with this music and create.
No one else was there.
Right. And to create an art form. So
one thing about the Blackout before we move on from it, more than 1,500 businesses had been vandalized when all was said and done. So many fires were set, and a congressional study estimated that the damages and losses totaled more than $300 million. I don't know what that would be in today's money, but a lot. It's how Ed Koch beat Abe Beame in the next mayoral primary, because we talk so much about how did Ed Koch win? How did he end up losing? And the Blackout apparently was a whole lot of why it became the Ed Koch era, the 80s. I should also say that Africa Bambaataa, his legacy is tarnished.
Oh dear.
Yes, he did bad things with children, and everybody knew it.
Oh, that's bad.
And finally started talking about it.
Ooh.
So he's got a big old asterisk next to his name.
Does he walk amongst us, or has he perished? Oh, he's still alive.
Yeah. They all are. Apparently, they're like a whole bunch, like all the people that I've mentioned in this story are still with us.
Alive. And all of them have been photographed by our friend Jonathan.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. So, yes. Okay,
whose archives I looked at recently. And he recently posted. So our friend, hip hop photographer, Jonathan Mannion, I think he recently posted a photograph that he did of DJ Clark Kent.
Oh,
on his Instagram.
Amazing. Now I will recognize those names. And there are so many of our listeners who know so much more about this subject than I do. And if you need to correct me or if you want to add to the story, I'm really in my nascency of discovering things about this subject matter, and I welcome it.
Well, your darling husband gave me a book for Christmas, I think 2 years ago, that is all about this.
Oh.
So I'll lend it to you.
That's so interesting.
Yes. Thanks, Joe.
Oh, and one more thing. Speaking of my mother, I was with her when I was working on the story. I know I wasn't here that summer. We were in Atlanta. Toby and I were in Atlanta, and we spent most summers in Atlanta. But my mother and father were here, but they were with friends in Stormville, New York. They were staying in Stormville, New York, but they decided to drive back that night.
Oh.
And so the lights went out as they were driving back. So there weren't any stoplights, but she said it was still light outside, which I think is so interesting. It was 9:30 summer night, and they came through the Bronx just like Bonfire of the Vanities.
Right.
And they were like, this doesn't look good. This is about to blow.
And indeed.
And their friend was driving, but they got home and nobody came downtown.
I can't help but point out that the way you constructed your sentence, because you're talking about you and Toby were in Atlanta. It's like, that was the night the lights went out and you were in Georgia.
This is true.
The tie-in is going to be so obvious today that you will be, I think, chuckling.
Okay.
Earlier on in this podcast, we talked a lot about our high school experience. Like, we were very enmeshed in our high school experience. So something happened 2 days ago.
What?
That brought me back to that. So a couple of things. So I went to the Whitney over the weekend. And as I told you, I passed by the Tesla showroom and saw all of the Tesla trucks that look like dumpsters. Did I tell you my favorite thing about the Tesla trucks? Did I tell you this?
No.
That in those people who have them in the suburbs, raccoons keep trying to break into them because they think they're dumpsters.
It's hysterical.
Yes.
I love that.
That is great. I love it too. And I tell anyone who will listen. So hooray. But anyway, so I went to the Whitney, and the Whitney right now has an incredible show up. That's also one of the best multimedia installations I've seen in a museum, possibly ever. It's a retrospective of Alvin Ailey.
Oh.
And it's amazing. We went to school with one of our dear friends still, Francesca Harper. And when she was in our class, she frequently had a half day and would then go to Alvin Ailey, where she was a student and a dancer. You know, I was thinking about when I was there about how, you know, when you're kids, like, you just take things on face value. It's like, oh, she's going to dance class. And I was standing in the middle of the Whitney looking at all of this. And I was like, oh, that's what she was doing. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then about, I think it was 2 days ago, maybe it was yesterday, Judith Jamison died.
Okay.
And so I wanted to talk a tiny little bit about Judith Jamison and how she ascended to being the second artistic director of the Alvin Ailey dance group. That's not the right word. I'm sorry. Company. And how that handover happened, and just a few other little facts about that.
Cool.
Did you ever see, I never saw any Alvin Ailey performances. Did you in the 80s?
Yes, for sure.
So Alvin Ailey, for those who don't know, was the first person, and he started in the 1950s, to be a Black person who had his own dance company and was a choreographer and rose to fame by creating work that was entirely centered on the American Black experience. And he traveled extensively, and he had a lot of federal funding, which was very interesting, as like an ambassador. And he did a lot of European tours and in Africa. And interestingly, his breakout piece was at the 92nd Street Y. He dominated that entire world. He created it, he dominated it, and created some of the most iconic work. And one of those iconic pieces was a piece just for Judith Jamison, who is an unbelievable dancer, and is a solo work called Cry that became her signature piece that was about Black women's experience in America. So when I went to the exhibit, you know, everything was that you see his notes for the choreography, you see how he placed bodies, there are all these video elements, and off to one side is a room with some ephemera, and hanging sort of suspended is a large portion of the AIDS quilt. And it is the Alvin Ailey dancers who died. And Alvin Ailey was not in that quilt, because when he died at the age of 58 on December 1st in 1989, he made sure that the doctor did not list his cause of death as AIDS. It was the cancer that was the final blow because he didn't want his mother to be embarrassed by him. And I thought that was the most poignant thing. So I was with a friend who was like, I was so glad that he was off in the corner because, as usual, I was standing crying by myself in front of the AIDS quilt. But it was extraordinarily poignant. So he died on December 1st, 1989, and December 21st, 1989, Judith Jamison became the first woman head of Alvin Ailey Dance Company. I don't know why I'm having a block on the word company. So she was in her own right an incredible human being and striking, very tall, stately posture, bald Black woman. She said something really lovely about Alvin Ailey in the New York Times in 1989 on December 21st when her ascendancy was announced. I'm just going to read that to you. She said, "I'd like to say right off the bat that this is not about stepping into anyone's shoes. We all have our own shoes to wear. There will," she said, "be gradual changes," which she declined to discuss, though she said the company would keep its Black identity and focus. Quote, "I think the biggest challenge will be to hold the company together and make it grow, to continue Alvin's dream, but also infuse that dream so that the company does not stay in the same place and continues to grow." I just like that she was honoring him and very forward thinking at the same time. So our friend Francesca, who was in that world as we blithely went about our own business, at least I did, not really understanding what that was about. And she was steeped in this groundbreaking era because, she was going there before Alvin Ailey died.
Right.
So she was going to, Nightingale during the day and then going off to this, which is the whitest place on earth, going to this dance company that was entire and still is very dedicated to displaying, identifying, and sharing an understanding of Black identity in America. So that was kind of fascinating. And Francesca had a really beautiful photograph of her with Judith Jamison on Facebook. But then I was reading about what Judith Jamison did. She also founded her own dance company. She did a lot of things. In 1980, she was one of the stars of Sophisticated Ladies.
Oh, I love that show.
I
haven't thought about that in so long.
She starred with Gregory Hines.
Wow.
And so here's another little tie. So Gregory
Hines comes up so much. We need to do a special story
just
for
Gregory Hines.
Gregory Hines.
He was lovely.
He really, come on.
If you didn't love Gregory Hines, it was like you had a major screw loose. He managed to be like charming and sexy and goofy and just, he was
fun.
110%. So interestingly, in my entirely self-involved way, the other thing about this little story is that one of my dear, dear friends from Kenyon College, Katrine Westergaard, her mom was the producer of Sophisticated Ladies.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So we now have a Chapin and Nightingale tie-in. I got very weepy on this particular little assignment today because my dear friend, Katrine, is also no longer with us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nor is her mother. Much longer ago, but yes, she is no longer with us. So this has been like my sobbing down memory lane.
Honey.
And yeah, I know. And so last week, my segment was filled with rage. And I think I'm working through the whole election thing this is the sobbing episode.
Okay. Yeah. I can't remember. I mean, now they say that the stages of grief don't go in the order that they said originally. I mean, you can sort of bop around. So you do you.
I am. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I think, was right about the stages, but yes, the order, and they can repeat. You can ping pong between a couple of them. So
who knows what next week will be?
I know. It's going to be so exciting. Although you did last week, you did swan dive and death. So I guess I'm doing death today. So Judith Jamison, legendary, took up the reins when Alvin Ailey died. There is an interim person. Interestingly, with Alvin Ailey, when Judith Jamison retired, I think his name is Robert Battle, took up as creative director and left like under weird nebulous circumstances of his own declaring, like very recently.
Okay.
And so there's an acting director there. But I was looking around on the website, and there, when I got to, because there's the principal company and then there's the company for the up and comers, which is Ailey 2. And there's our beautiful friend. And she is the creative director.
Yes.
And so to see, yes, in the passage of time, thinking about our lovely friend as the kid running with her dance bag away from Nightingale off to the studio, and seeing her in that place was actually very joyful. And again, this is part of my weeping in the face of what happened last week. But I was so happy to think about how these women, these two strong, beautiful, incredible, innovative Black women were and are in charge.
Oh, now I'm going to start crying.
Yep. That's what we're doing today. I don't get sentimental frequently, but when I do it. I go hard. For anyone who's interested in dance and you don't know about Ailey, I highly recommend that you look into it. The choreography that Alvin Ailey did was extraordinarily accessible, and he drew from his own life, juke joints and jazz clubs and a lot of imagery of the American South and New York City. They're very narrative. They're really fun, easy, very accessible. So take a look at that, and take a look at what Ailey 2 is doing. You can see what the next little Francescas are up to and how she is guiding them.
And Fran's daughter goes to Nightingale.
I do know that. So raising a glass to Judith and her incredible accomplishments, and taking the reins in 1989 when we were still in the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, and how some people could talk about it and some people couldn't.
So you said our tie-in was obvious?
I think the African-American experience in America through dance.
Expressed through dance. In New York City.
In the
80s.
Yeah.
So Jessica, all these stages of grief, have you gone through denial? Are we past that?
I will never be in denial. I will never be in denial about this because my rage is too big.
Right.
My rage is no, that's not true. At some point, I will get so overwhelmed with the shitstorm that I will compartmentalize. And that compartmentalization will be fueled in some part or be a reflection of a need to deny.
I mean, honestly, we can only deal with what we can deal with. And it is so overwhelming when you think of all the potential horror show that's coming our way. And that's why it's important to just think about one thing at a time and do what little we can do. Local outreach and community, I think, is very important.
I think, yes, I agree with you.
Keep it close. And then eventually we'll start spreading out again. But take care of yourself. Put your own oxygen mask on first, that kind of thing.
Agreed. I will add one thing, though. Even though we are talking about New York City in the 80s, I was reminded, I forgot who I was talking to about this, but community grassroots movement and taking care of your own, and then going out more. And it reminded me so much of a lot of the stuff that we experienced in our 20s in the 90s, and women's marches on Washington and that sort of thing. And I was at first despairing, like, what can we do? Like, we don't have the House. We don't have the Senate. We have this fucking ape. We have all this ridiculous shit. And then I remembered going to the march in Washington for abortion rights and how incredibly galvanizing that was, and how women and men who were marching got so much strength from being together. And that spawned even more work and volume literally, like in terms of doing more things and also loudness of the message. So that gave me a little bit of hope and remembering what that was like. So it's another thing. If you need to look up, you're having your doom scrolling in the middle of the night, stop it and look up 90s activism, because that might be a bit inspiring.
Cool. Let's do it.
And start a zine. Be a riot girl.